I'm Femi OK. Today on the stream, our focus is on Russia. The best-known opposition voice to President Putin outside of Russia is Alexey Navalny. Now, he's a recent arrest and charging and sentencing inside of Russia brought people outside onto the streets and overseas a lot of criticism. So today we are focused on the impact of Navalny's case domestically and internationally. I know you have opinions. We'd love to hear from you and for you to weigh in. You know what to do if you're on YouTube right now. Here's a comment section. I look forward to seeing your comments.
Russia is going currently through an unprecedented wave of political repressions. Alexey Navalny, who was poisoned nearly to death, came back on the 17th of January back to Russia, and he was immediately arrested. Shortly after, a lot of his high-profile supporters, including two members of Pussy Riot, Masha Lekhina and Lucia Stein, were arrested. Dozens of people are spending 20-30 days in detention centers because they participated in protest actions in support of Alexei Navalny. Putin is currently in panic because he's fearing to lose his power, and he sees Navalny as a really, really strong political opponent, and he makes everything he can do to silence him.
That is one take on how Navalny's situation is being handled in Russia. You're about to hear three more. Hello, guests. Really nice to see you, Paul, Roman, and also Alexis. Paul, welcome to the stream. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi. My name is Paul Robinson. I'm a professor at the University of Ottawa, and I'm the author of numerous books on Russian Soviet history and contemporary Russian affairs.
Good to have you. Roman, welcome back to the stream. Nice to see you again. Remind our audience who you are and what you do.
My name is Roman Dobrokhotov. I'm chief of The Insider, which is Russian investigative media outlet. So we're doing investigations on a very different topic, but our latest investigation was on poisoning Alexei Navalny, who was poisoned by Novichok, which is special chemical agent, military agent, very dangerous. And we found concrete military FSB officers, so officers of Russian security service who did this assassination.
Okay, thank you. We'd love to hear more about that in just a moment. Alexis, good to have you back on the stream. Remind our audience who you are and what you do.
I'm Alexis Lerner, glad to be here, and I am a scholar of authoritarianism and protest, specifically in Russia. I'm working at the University of Western Ontario.
Nice to have you. And let me start with Roman. Roman, because you are in Moscow, you're in Russia right now. When Alexei Navalny went back to Russia, he was arrested, he was charged, he was sentenced. What did you make of that scenario?
Well, I think it was very predictable that he would be arrested. So many people, many of his friends, colleagues asked him not to return back to Russia right after this assassination, because it was very clear that Vladimir Putin is coming after him, that he believes that Navalny is very dangerous. But still, Navalny is a patriot. As an oppositioner, he believed that this is very important to be inside the country. He didn't want to become an exiled politician, as many other exiled politicians who are not that prominent as Alexei Navalny. So yeah, it is dangerous not only because he's now in prison, but also because it is still possible that Kremlin will repeat the assassination attempt. I think this is not very likely, but still this is possible.
Alexis, the reason that Navalny was charged when he went back to Russia was because he failed to turn up for his parole meetings. But as he famously said during the trial, I was in a coma. So what do you make of the whole sentencing situation? Was that valid? Is that valid?
Is it valid? This is something that has been satirized widely on the internet, from on TikTok and Vkontakte and all of these different social media platforms, because people specifically believe it not to be valid. The state can do a number of different things, and one of them is to put Navalny in jail. I guess this is an alternative to making some kind of deal or killing him altogether. But this is the choice that they've made. And it will have certain ramifications.
Paul, Navalny is such a fascinating figure because inside Russia, there's one take on him. Outside of Russia, there's another take on him. Let me share this headline with you, for instance, from Politico. Russia, mass arrests in Russia of protesters demanding Navalny's release. People did go on the streets in Russia. They did protest. There was protesting also, criticism also outside of the country. Why was that?
Well, I think that in the West, there's a fairly clear conclusion has been drawn that the Russian state was responsible for his poisoning. So that has caused a certain degree of indignation among Western leaders, though they haven't, it must be said, done very much about it so far beyond talk. So I think Russia's international image has suffered, at least certainly in those parts of the world which were already inclined to look negatively upon it. I would doubt it's had the same impact in parts of the world which did not have such bad relations with Russia. So countries like, say, China or India, Brazil, places like that, probably the impact has not been the same.
We spoke to some people who were protesting when Navalny was charged, when he was arrested, and Ashok is one of them. And he talks about the protests being more than about Navalny. Have a listen to him, Alexis. I'd love you to come off the back of his thoughts.
It was scary to take part in this protest. Half of the city center was closed down, and there was police violence towards the peaceful protesters. And afterwards, if you were arrested, terrible conditions in the detention centers, and even torturing. But it was very important because it was not just about Navalny, but about everything that's been happening in Russia in last years. Almost no help during the pandemic situation, new prohibiting laws. And the new thing is a feeling that we are the many and that we can change the situation.
Sure, there's a long history of this sort of protest happening in contemporary Russia. This is nothing new. These pro-democracy, anti-corruption kind of crowds coming together to express their discontent. A few things are different this time. I don't necessarily think that there's so much more violence happening, but perhaps on different days of the protest there's more violence than on other days. But there are different folks coming out to the protests. So we have people coming out for the first time. We have people who are a lot younger coming out. And in the famous sort of Yakutsk video, that if you've seen it online, people are coming out despite negative 45-degree temperatures. So there is a lot happening that hasn't necessarily happened in 2011, 12, or 17, 18.
Roman, how do you characterize this latest round of protests? And it appears that the protesters have stopped protesting too. Roman?
Well, I don't think that they have stopped protesting. I think that it's only starting, actually. And Navalny's team already announced that there will be also protests in spring and in summer. And I think that there will be very big crowds. And speaking about new trends, well, first of all, I agree that there are a lot of young people, like students' age, in this protest, and there are more and more people of this age because these people don't watch TV, so they don't believe propaganda. Is that we saw very big numbers of people in Russian regions, especially if you take it like as a share, as a percentage. So thousands of people in relatively small, faraway cities. So I think that people in regions are even more active than in Moscow right now, which is pretty unusual. Possibly not. It's not only about Navalny, because these people are also against this economic crisis, against constitutional changes, etc., etc.
I'm going to go to YouTube next. Alexis, you were laughing, so I'm going to put this one to you. Leon Camper, what social media do people use in the protests? What is the amount of censorship going on? Alexis, go ahead.
Sure. There's a ever occurring oscillation happening in the amount of censorship going on. Sometimes there are some media, TV Rain, for example, and in previous years, different kinds of social media platform, from LiveJournal to TikTok to Vkontakte, which is sort of the Russian version of Facebook. And so this is happening. Sometimes there's a lot of free speech allowed to happen, and sometimes there's a lot less. And this is certainly a period when there's a lot less happening.
Right. I'm going to put this one to Roman. Roman, unaffiliated, asks, what happened to the Russian doctor who treated Navalny in Russia?
Yeah, that the death of one of the doctors in Omsk, where Navalny was cured, or I don't know, at least he was there. I don't think that the death of one of the doctors is relevant, because we spoke with dozens of people and no one saw him during, well, Navalny was there, so possibly this is just a coincidence.
Okay. Oh, that's helpful to know. Thank you. Appreciate that. One more. This, Paul, I'm going to put this to you. This is Limam. Navalny has no plan. He just does what he receives from overseas. That is interesting. That is suggesting that he's getting direction from international players, something that we hear from inside Russia, from Russian authorities often. Paul?
Well, certainly this is the line that the Kremlin and much of the media are taking, which is to portray Navalny as essentially being in the pay of foreign states. And a video was released a few days ago showing one of his associates meeting with a Russian diplomat and apparently asking the diplomat for dirt, which could be spread about senior Russian officials and millionaires such as Usmanov and Abramovich, who are famous for owning British soccer clubs. So this is certainly the line which is being taken. I personally doubt it's that direct. However, I think Navalny and his team are possibly making some degree of sort of tactical mistake in appealing very much to Western states to put sanctions on Russia and so on, which is very much allowing the Russian media to portray them in this light. And so I think they need to be rather cautious about what they're doing.
Sure. Here on my laptop, have a look here. I've got from the Moscow Times this headline: Russia expels European diplomats over Navalny protests from the Foreign Ministry. So there was a meeting, there were conversations. It did not go well. Here's Angela Merkel from February the 5th.
During our meeting, we were informed of the expulsion of German, Swedish, and Polish diplomats from Moscow in connection with demonstrations on Navalny. We considered this expulsion to be unjustified, and we believe this is a further step away from the rule of law noticeable in Russia right now. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank.
Rowan, has the situation around Navalny, has it escalated? So now it's an international crisis. What does it feel like from inside Russia?
Well, I think it's very important that Western community is now taking a tough stand against this assassination and imprisonment. But I think for Vladimir Putin, it is much more important what's happening inside. How many people will join this protest? How many celebrities and opinion leaders will also support Navalny? This is the most important, because I don't think that sanctions or something like this can challenge Putin's regime. But massive protests, if millions of people come to streets, that would be a real challenge, and that is what likely to happen. That's why we see new tough repressions. I think they are unprecedented because we see not only activists but also journalists who are detained. Some of them have criminal investigations opened against them on a very absolutely fake pretense. So this is unbelievable pressure, and escalation is already happening. So I don't know how it ends, but we will see very dramatic political changes soon.
Let me just bring in Sergei
Right.
Lavrov. He's Russia's foreign minister. Paul, you go first, and I'll make the foreign minister wait for you. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, really? No, I would slightly disagree with that. I think it's very unlikely that we would see millions of people on the streets in Russia. I think people who are hoping that will be the case are probably mistaken. And it was interesting to see one of the Liberal Party leaders in Russia, Grigory Levinsky, making this sort of comment recently, saying that street protests had a very sometimes counterproductive effect in increasing government impression and so on. And I think that's actually more likely than that we're going to see a massive wave of more protests come spring or summer.
Roman?
Well, Grigory Levinsky is one of the members of Putin's team, so there are people who play different roles. Some of them play roles of liberal oppositioners, but always say what Putin's want to hear. And of course, Putin wants to hear that there will be no protests, that the protests are counterproductive. So that's why he's saying that. I'm not sure that millions of people will come to the street, but I'm absolutely sure that this will be the biggest crowds in recent history. So yeah.
Can I jump
Sergei
in?
Lavrov. Yeah, can I put in Sergei Lavrov first, Alexis? Is that okay?
Sure,
I've got a thought for you that I want to share with you. If you just give me a moment, no worries. Sergei Lavrov. This is February the 5th, responding to what appeared to be international pressure around Navalny and requests for his release. Have a listen. Have a look.
We are used to the European Union more and more often drawing on one-sided restrictions that have no legal base. We are building our life on the basis that the EU is an unreliable partner, at least for the time being.
Alexis, let me just ask you this question from YouTube. This is from Alex Sanderson. Thanks, Alex. A question: what kind of pressure can the international community apply to Putin's regime, not counting the sanctions on specific individuals or specific parts of Russian economy? Can you handle that?
Sure. So, of course, you're right. One major kind of sanctions is to sanction individuals. And we saw this a few years ago, sanctioning, for example, people's private assets, not letting their kids go to school in Europe and so on, travel bans. Can also do economic or trade sanctions, like in 2006, when Russia didn't accept wine from Georgia, or in 2014, when it didn't accept cheese and dairy from France, among other things. You can do these kinds of sanctions, and again, diplomatic sanctions, like we just saw, where we're expelling consular officials from Russia, from the US, from Europe. We saw all of this happening, and none of this really has, I believe, a heavy likelihood to change Putin's behavior, because we have seen in the past that it has not affected a lot of policymaking. However, there is another kind of sanction, which is a military sanction, and any kind of NATO posturing or military action that might happen in response certainly would have a strong reaction. It's possible also the sanctions against the pipeline happening between Germany and Russia would also result in some kind of policy-making changes.
I want to bring in another thought into our conversation, and this is, where does this leave us? We have a very high-profile opposition figure in Alexey Navalny. He is now in prison. He's now doing time. What does that mean for opposition voices in Russia? Have a listen, have a look. And Roman, I'd love to hear your response.
There's no sign that Putin's approach of harsh repression of political opposition will be weakened in the near future. And the Navalny team, I don't see them having a realistic strategy of being able to peel away members of the Putin elite and get support from powerful business groups or regional officials. I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. So I'm afraid that Navalny will go down as a martyr to the cause of democracy in Russia. But there's a long line of people before him who also suffered and paid the price, and in the short run and the medium run have not been able to get Russia back on the democratic track.
Well, I would agree that there is no clear path to change or even to revolution. But revolutions are always unpredictable. And for example, in early January 2014, no one in Ukraine would believe that there will be any revolution. The same in Armenia, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, and other Russian neighbors. It's always unpredictable. That's why I also don't want to make some concrete predictions on concrete dates. But I see that the new
Roman, I'm sorry, but we're losing the audio on your connection. We see you, but we don't hear you clearly. So I'm going to push on just a little bit because Schultzy100, who's on YouTube, asks, is Navalny even popular enough to challenge President Putin? Let me share with you, Schultzy, great question, thank you. Let me share with you this on my laptop. What do Russians think about Navalny? This is a recent poll. And the blue, people who approve of Navalny, the orange, the disapprove. Look how big this is in Russia, right? 56%. And then a good 25% don't care, don't know. And then looking at people thinking in Russia who think that Navalny should have come back to Russia, because, of course, when he came back, he was arrested. 22%, that's a tiny percentage, think that was a good idea. 51% are neutral, let's just make that a shrug, and 25% disapprove. This is a very different Alexey Navalny poll inside Russia than it appears to be outside of Russia. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he's not a particularly popular person. And that's true even among liberal oppositionists, a number of whom I think regard him with a certain amount of suspicion for a number of reasons. The first to do with his rather extremist nationalist background, where he has made a number of extremely inflammatory statements about immigrants and Jews and homosexuals and various others in the past. But also because he's, I think, seen as himself, at least this is certainly what people fear of him. There's a certain fear of that he's slightly authoritarian himself. Now, whether that's true or not, I cannot say because I don't know the man. But certainly, this is the impression one gets that people have of him within Russia. So he's not desperately popular. What we've seen is over time, like 5 years ago, very few people knew of him. And as more people have known him, the number of people who approve of him has gone up. So there's more people who now say they think positively of him than did, say, 5-10 years ago, simply because more people know of him. But at the same time, the number of people who disapprove of him has gone up even faster. So it seems to me he's not probably the best figure to provide leadership and unity to the opposition movement.
The Russian diaspora has also weighed in on this conversation that Navalny has really focused people's opinions and thoughts and attention to what is going on inside Russia. And some academics have got together and they have made an appeal. Have a listen.
Last week, a group of academics, over 800 people of Russian origin working across the globe, issued an open letter asking and calling for de-escalation. We are outraged by the use of chemical weapon, which is a violation of international law. We call to stop persecuting Alexey Navalny and his supporters and investigate his poisoning. We call to stop beating and suppressing peaceful demonstrators. This path leads Russia to catastrophe. And we call to switch to cooperation to combat pandemics and address other major problems. And this is the way to build the better world.
Guess I have to say that you have inspired a huge conversation in our YouTube comment section. Either you have or Alexey Navalny has, which is really mission accomplished. He's got people talking. Paul, thank you for joining us today. Roman, appreciate you. And Alexis, thank you very much as well. We really appreciate you. If you want to follow the Russia story, many stories, but particularly what's happening to Alexey Navalny, have a look here. You can always go to aljazeera.com/news and you will find related stories. Some of the recent stories you can just flick through here, keep up to date. get some backgrounds. We're always happy to get you up to speed here on Al Jazeera. So many more takes and stories about Alexey Navalny. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of today's show. I'm Femi OK, signing off from a Home Edition studio. See you next time. Thanks for watching.